Welcome in, everybody, to the Drew Goodman podcast, show number 293. I am exhausted. I'm exhausted after watching an unbelievable, fabulous final in the Nations Cup in Boston. As you know, Canada over the United States in overtime, 3-2 on the Connor McDavid goal. Remarkable. I mean, I took notes after the Saturday affair between the United States and Canada in the round robin when there were three fights within the first 9 seconds. The Kachuk brothers went Hanson brothers on the Canadians. And I remarked afterward in capital letters on my little note sheet that was the best sporting event I've seen in quite some time. I don't know the last one that matched that intensity. And it was the same thing in the championship game. It had everything. I mean, it was physical. It was outstanding, high-level hockey. You know, some people were saying, well, this is like Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. To me, it's actually better than that because in the Stanley Cup Finals, other than, some people around, Canada and the United States that may be pulling for a team, it's two cities, right? It was the Avalanche taking on Tampa Bay. So it was the Rocky Mountain region against, Florida, if you will. We'll count even the folks down in South Florida that probably root for the Panthers. But this was two nations, and Canada has always been the preeminent hockey nation, and the United States has caught them. The United States has caught Canada, and they really wanted to prove that they had fully caught them. And I have so many thoughts, man, as I'm sure you have, and it's so fresh because it just ended. PK Subban said earlier today, and he was on every ESPN show throughout the day, and he has great commentary, and he broke the game down, and he broke the emotional level of what the athletes were feeling on both sides down, I thought, remarkably well. But he said if these two teams played 100 games, at the end of 100 games, it'd be 50 for Canada, it'd be 50 for Team USA. And after watching that championship game, he's absolutely right. You figured there was going to be some puck luck. You hoped it wasn't a bad bounce. It was a great goal by the best player in the world. And one of the things I also wrote down after watching the first couple of games of the tournament, most notably the Saturday game, but I watched every game the Americans played, and I watched 3 of the 4 the Canadians played. In fact, I watched every game the Canadians played. Without question, and this is, obviously there's some folks who play in the NHL from Europe and from Russia that are world class. But by and large, these were the best players in the world, with some exceptions. But they're the best players in the world. And even having said that, where there are no third or fourth line guys, or no second line guys, all there are elite guys. 97 and 29 for Canada still stood out. They were the best forwards on the ice. And for me, it wasn't particularly close. And Connor McDavid didn't play great in the championship game. He had trouble handling the puck. But then, the one time he gets left, Austin Matthews kind of slid over and he, is all alone in the slot. And he buries a great shot to beat Hellebuyck. But he's phenomenal. He is truly, as we've known for a while, one of the two best forwards in the world. The other one is Nathan MacKinnon, who scored the first goal. He scored 4 goals in the tournament. They play at a different speed. Even among these greats, they're at a different speed. And I thought that could possibly be the difference going into this championship game. Not that I'm some savant. I think other people thought, the skill level of those two in particular, and now coupled with Cale Makar, who's the best defenseman in the world and didn't play in the Saturday game against the U.S., that ultimately could be the difference. Well, McKinnon scored the first. Connor McDavid scored the game winner, and one of the assists was Cale Makar. Austin Matthews had a fabulous chance to win it in overtime. The U.S. dominated the first 7.5 minutes of overtime. Canada's first real chance was the one they ended up burying. Maybe there was one right prior to that. But before that, it looked like the U.S. was going to win it on a couple of occasions. And Bennington, who everyone felt going into the tournament would take a back seat, as every goaltender basically does in the NHL the last few years, to Winnipeg's Hellebuyck. He played great, and he made an unbelievable save, point blank range on Austin Matthews earlier in that overtime. Could have gone either way. It was great theater. It was remarkable, and I know a lot of people have wanted to juxtapose that against what we saw with the NBA All-Star Weekend. And the NBA, I'll give them this: they're trying every year. Adam Silver and his minions try to come up with a new format to make that All-Star game more compelling. It ain't going to happen. And the bottom line is, the reason it's not going to happen is the players don't friggin' want to play. And I get it now. That's what this thing is morphed into. Now, 25, 30 years ago, and I hate always going, oh, back in the day it was better then. Well, back in the day it was better, because the Jordans and the Birds and the Magics and there was pride on the line, and they played hard. They also didn't take games off during the regular season for load management. Don't get me going on that. Now, the NHL, if you want to say, yeah, the NHL always plays hard. No, they don't. In the All-Star format, where it's just, an All-Star game, it's 14-12, because God bless the goalies, nobody's hitting anyone, and it's a basketball version on ice. This worked because, first of all, we haven't had a tournament like this, where it's the U.S. and Canada. They haven't met in 9 years. So there's a lot of pent-up pride, if you will. This was fabulous, because nobody's going to question how hard they were playing. No one. And they created memories for a lifetime from the athlete standpoint and from the fans' perspective as well. And I know everyone wants to fix all-star games, and it's usually this time of year where I get on my soapbox and I say, get rid of the Pro Bowl, which they've already done. Honor guys. You were an all-pro, or you played and made the Pro Bowl, and they can do some weekend. I ain't going to watch it. They can do skills challenge. They can play flag football. I never watched it. As entertaining as the Manning brothers are, didn't watch it at all, will not watch it unless I'm absolutely bored out of my friggin' mind. The NBA All-Star Weekend, I didn't watch. No, I'm lying. I watched a little bit because I was home, and I wanted to see, all right, are they going to play hard in this new first to 40? And I think it was a good attempt. The only guy who played hard, and now he's out for the season with blood clots, is the kid, Victor Wembanyama. He played hard. Said, I'm not going. He's like old school. He said, I'm not here to make friends. This kid's a puppy too, because I'm here to win. Loved it. He played hard. Nobody else did. And you're not going to get him to. And if the hockey format was the same, those guys aren't going to play hard, because nobody's going to get hurt in a meaningless game. The only all-star game that still works is baseball, because it's a confrontation. It's mano a mano. It's a pitcher who's typically only going to be out there for 3 outs against the best hitters in the world. And guess what? Those guys are trying to get a hit, and that guy's trying to get him out. So that still works. The only one that still works. But this Four Nations Cup, next year you have the Olympics with the NHL players going, and you can have the World Cup. This is great theater. This is not contrived like the in-season tournament in the NBA. I could give a rat's ass who wins that. It means nothing. You're telling me the Lakers, do they have a banner up somewhere that they won the in-season tournament a year ago? And you know what? This most recent one, the second in-season tournament, I swear to you, I have no idea who won it. And I work in sports. I love sports. I love all the leagues. I love great athletes. I have no idea who won it this year. So anyhow, this Four Nations thing, this worked. And you honestly, it's hard to expand it in such a short window. But there are other nations that can be, highly representative of putting a hell of a hockey team together. But this U.S.-Canada 2 games, I hope people who are just casual observers of the sport, I'm sure they were locked in, and maybe the sport has won over some new fans because there's nothing better than Stanley Cup playoff hockey. And there was nothing better that I've seen in quite some time. I mean, the Super Bowl was dog shit. This was great. This was unbelievable. And unfortunately, the cliche applies. Somebody had to lose, right? Somebody had to go down, and I'm an American. Unfortunately, it was Team USA. But the Avalanche, man, they were well represented, and you just got to feel for just how great, truly great McKinnon is, how truly great Makar is. Devon Toews was, as he always is, steady. You don't really notice him, but he always makes the right play. Makar steals the headlines. This is how bad, by the way, I'm not trying to beat up the NBA, but this is how bad the All-Star weekend is. For the third time in a row, I guess, Max McClung won the slam dunk contest. And I saw the highlights of that. I didn't see it live. And it's hard to do new dunks where you truly get out of your chair. I mean, he jumped over a car while pulling the ball out of somebody's hands. And then he made all 5 of his dunks on the first try. He did one where he pulled it out of his hands, bangs it on the front of the iron, and still dunks it. And Max McClung is listed at 6'2". And it's great. I mean, that was some of the best dunks I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, probably going back to the Vince Carter days. But having said that, they have to keep bringing this kid in who's not an NBA player. He's in the G League. He's played 40 minutes in his entire career in the NBA. And I think 25 of those minutes came, in one ball game late one year. I forget which team was for, Philadelphia or somebody. And good for Max McClung. But you're having to import guys because your stars don't want to participate in the game. They're not going to play hard, and they don't even want to play in the made for television skills events. And the dunk contest had always been the premier skill event, and they don't even want to be involved in that. So it is what it is. Save your money. Let the players rest if that's what it must be, because as big a sports fan as I am, I ain't watching that. And I'm not gonna watch an NHL All-Star game, but I ain't never gonna miss the Four Nations Cup, and I'm not gonna miss the Olympic tournament in Italy next year. That was special. That was special. All right. Speaking of special, good friend of mine. The next 2 weeks, we chatted for so long, as I sometimes do with my guests. So we're going to break this into 2 parts. But Alanna Rizzo is going to join me next couple of weeks, and I think many of you who follow the Rockies remember Alanna. She got one of her first big breaks, doing the Rockies in her hometown state. She's a CU grad. She was a tremendous track athlete, in fact, growing up in Colorado Springs. And then from the Rockies, she went to the MLB Network. From the MLB Network, she went to the Dodgers, and she was with the Dodgers, I think, 7 or 8 seasons, did fabulous work there, and then went back to MLB Network, and now is doing some stuff there still and some other places. But we got caught up, talked a lot about baseball, talked shop, laughed a little bit, and had so much fun. As I said, we broke it out over 2 parts. So this is part 1 with an old friend, a good friend, Alanna Rizzo. All right, Rizzo, I used to see you all the time. First when we worked together, then when you went to the dark side with the Dodgers. But I don't see as much. We text periodically, but you're back east and you're still working at MLB and doing something with Toronto. I can't keep track of everything you're doing. How you been?
I'm good. It's always good to see you, Goody. Obviously we've kept in touch over the course of the years, but life and work has changed course for me. So Rockies fans can appreciate this. I married Chris Iannetta, and then I live on the East Coast with Chris and his 2 kids, and life's a little different in Mass than it is in Colorado, but I've been all over the place. You mentioned LA and then back to MLB Network, and, now doing stuff in the podcast world as you are, and, still trying to stay around the game as much as possible.
Well, you are, because I see your stuff everywhere. Think back, because obviously I'm a little older than you, but we've both now been in the business for quite a while. And I think, if memory serves me correct, kind of like Jenny, you started in one of those small Texas towns. Am I right?
Yeah, I started in Wichita Falls, Texas, and that was my first on-air job. Of course, we had internships and everything going on when Jenny was at CSU and I was at the University of Colorado and stuff. But I started in Wichita Falls, Texas, at a small, tiny station. CBS there, but it was market 142 out of, 200 television markets. And then I was there for 9 months, felt like 9 years. But, high school football, all the rage there, Friday Night Lights, of course, Midwestern State, which was like a Division III school. And then you just take the feeds from all the national stuff, obviously, the Cowboys and the Bucks and all of those things. And, the Mavericks and everybody that when I went to all along, taking all the national feeds from the respective states I lived in. So Wichita Falls, Texas to Madison, Wisconsin. I started covering obviously the Brewers there and the Milwaukee Bucks and Green Bay Packers and the whole thing. And then from there, I got to come home. Madison, I had an out in my contract, and I said if I was able to get anything in Colorado, I wanted to do so. And a freelance opportunity came up at the time. As you remember, it was Fox Sports Rocky Mountain. And that's when you and I started working together. And I was a freelancer for 2007. Started in the middle of the 21 out of 22 games that the Rockies won. That wasn't insane at all. Didn't even know what a sinker ball pitcher was. Aaron Cook was our ace, and it was a massive learning curve. And, covered the Rockies for 5 seasons. Then MLB Network called, went there for 2 years. Dodgers started a new network, went to the dark side, as you called it, covered the Dodgers for 7 seasons, went back to MLB Network after the Dodgers won the World Series in 2020, worked on MLB again for 4 years with Chris Russo on High Heat, and you're caught up, present day.
There you go. We'll get to Mad Dog in a second, but I want to go back because a good friend of ours, a colleague, but more importantly, a good friend is Kenny Miller. And most people who are listening or watching, they're like, who's this guy, Kenny Miller? Kenny's now an executive at Amazon. And Kenny is one of the most talented sports people we know. And he has a great, not good, he has a great eye for talent. No, he didn't hire me, so you don't be blaming me out there. But he did hire Rizzo. He hired Carissa Thompson. He hired Jenny Cavnar. And I want to talk about the trio. He also hired Joel Klatt, and Joel's kicking ass right now. As
I remember when Joel just got started.
Yeah, Joel was doing baseball stuff. Of course, he had a baseball background. He played professionally for a while in the Padres chain. But I want to go back. You and Carissa, I forgot, you guys overlapped for a minute, didn't you, in Denver?
Yeah, when Carissa was on base, I think it was Baseball America at the time. She was doing something with Tom Helmer, and who used to obviously work at whatever the heck it is now, Root Sports or whatever it is now.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore.
I know, it's gone. So back in the day when it was FSN or Fox Sports Rocky Mountain, right, before it became Liberty Media and AT&T and Root and all the things. Carissa was there, and she was still shooting the Baseball America show with Helmer. And that's kind of how I got started too, again, as a freelancer. So to your point, it was Ken Miller was in charge of talent, but also Benji Kays was still there. And so it was Ken and Benji simultaneously that gave me a chance. And I remember having a conversation. It was so weird how it all came about. I had come home on vacation. And at the time, remember, we were still bringing resume tapes. Like, there was none of this YouTube stuff. There was none of this, like, just send me a link, all of that. So it was like physical VHS tapes. And I had brought some home because I wanted to do some informational interviews. And I really wanted to get back to Colorado. I mean, that was always my goal, was to get home. And I went to a Rockies game, ironically. And I went to a game, and it was, I was there with some other folks. Sorry for the dinging. I don't know how to turn this off. I was with some folks there that worked at Fox Sports Rocky Mountain. And I said, hey, I'd really like to get back to Colorado. And one thing led to another. And they gave the tape to Benji and to Kenny. And, they hired me. And I was a freelancer for the remainder of 7, all of 2008. And then January 1st of 2009, I became full-time. So I covered the Rockies and, obviously DU with the, the Pioneer hockey teams and basketball teams. And of course, I was so excited to be able to cover Colorado, my alma mater, where I went for both of my degrees. And being able to cover your school. And this was, back in the day when we were still crappy before, in between the McCartney and Deion Sanders time. Okay. So I was able to cover the Buffs, and then, it was awesome to be home. And I honestly would have died as the Rockies sideline reporter had a national network not called, but, it's been, a big, huge step in the process, going from not knowing what who Aaron Cook was to being able to cover some of the stuff I've covered. It's been really, really, really fun.
Yeah, you've had a fabulous run, and you got a ton more in front of you. I want to go back for a moment because when I was, putting together notes, and obviously I know you well, and I know your career path. And for those that may not know, if Alanna is all in on something, i.e., her alma mater, still the Colorado Rockies. She cares a lot about the Rockies, obviously cares a great deal about the Dodgers. If you're all in on something, of all my friends, you are like all in, that you are passionate about it. So I haven't had a chance to ask you about your impressions the last 2 football seasons with Coach Prime.
Yeah.
What do you got?
It's funny because when I first found out that he was hired as the head football coach, I was like, well, this is interesting. You knew that it was going to be the talk of the town, but I was like, is it going to be for the right reasons? And at first I was very skeptical, because there's one thing when you talk that type of talk and have that type of showmanship and swagger and all of these people surrounding you and all the celebrities at the game and this, that, and the other thing. And then you win 4 games and you're like, I could have done this on my own. I didn't need Prime to come in to do this. I mean, I think Colorado has been mired in mediocrity for so long in terms of their football program, that I was happy that we were relevant again. Now, seeing what they were able to do last year was incredibly impressive. And what also impresses me is the fact that he decided to stay. And I wasn't sure if he was going to stay with Shadur and Travis Hunter and everybody. Like, it's a different complexion in terms of the construct of the roster, right? Or the lineup. And I talk about it in baseball terms, but just everybody that's there, and obviously the transfer portal and everything. The dynamic of college football is very different now. But the fact that he says he loves Boulder, he's committed to stay, we're relevant again. And I as long as it's for the right reasons, and you can win some games, and people have bought in. And say what you want about Prime. I mean, he's a huge personality, but say what you want. People are talking about Colorado football again. Again, I want it to be with incremental improvement every single year, but it's certainly better than what we were and who we were for really the better part of the last couple decades.
You characterized it properly. You're relevant again. Colorado's relevant again. I mean, it was no one even knew what the record was unless you were really passionate about it, and you knew it wasn't very good. And right. College game day, I think multiple times have been there. Back to back, the first year, back to back Big Fox Sunday was there consecutive weekends. I mean, that's unheard of.
So it's insane. It's insane to have the attention that the Colorado Buffs were getting again. And, obviously College game day was there a ton. We were on national TV almost every single week, whether it was ESPN or ABC. Now, living on the East Coast, the games here start at 10 freaking p.m. at night, so it's like, oh, brother. But it's good. It's good to have some juice back. And not to mention what it did for this university. I mean, season tickets are sold out again year in and year out. What it does for the Boulder community and the surrounding areas in terms of the influx of the positivity going into the economy. I mean, say what you want, whether you're a football fan or not, or a sports fan or not, or a Deion fan or not. I mean, the Prime effect is real, and it happened very quickly.
Yeah. And Alanna, you can glean this from far away. And I don't profess to know Deion. I don't. I've met him when he was playing back in the day a couple of times. But I really felt like he was going to stay. I said it on this podcast because from people who do know him a little bit, he truly does love it here. For all the pomp and circumstance around Deion, he is a guy that likes to go home. He likes to go fishing. He loves Boulder. And again, you went to school there. We're biased. We're Coloradans now, even though I'm originally from New York.
Right.
He bought in, and it's understandable. So that's a hard place to leave. I mean, what do you it's not, the grass ain't always greener, as the saying goes.
But again, it's like, I think with Dion and that personality, it's such a magnanimous personality. It's like bigger, faster, stronger. And I mean, when the NFL comes calling, you have to listen. And I don't doubt that he had offers and people calling him and saying, hey, even not for nothing. I mean, even if he elevated their program, whether it's the Cowboys or whatever for the next couple of years to make it interesting again and put more butts in the seats, you certainly have to entertain that. But I do love that he loves Boulder. And I love that he said he wasn't going to leave and he didn't. And I think with what the college has had to go through over the course of the last, 10, 15 years, there's been a tremendous amount of turnover in the head coaching position. So when you get a guy that has a personality and a resume like Dion, that has elevated the game and the level of play for the university, and decides to stay there and says, I don't care. You're not going, you're not pursuing other opportunities. Everyone's playing in this bowl game that you earned. We're all playing. And you're not, you don't get the day off. You don't get to go here. You don't get to go there. He's brought, and again, say what you want, but, for the first time ever, the entire team had a GPA above 3.0. I mean, he's making some really positive changes there. And it's, again, the bar was low, but he's making some really positive changes there. And I think you can only go up from here. And I appreciate the fact that Colorado had the wherewithal and the foresight to hire somebody with the personality like that. And I give Dion a lot of credit for making a really mediocre program matter again, because I don't think it mattered since, Bill McCartney was there, God rest his soul, to me, the best football coach in Colorado football history. Yeah. I think, and not to compare Dion to Coach Mack, but the level of relevance and the level of importance of the university is back again.
There's a lot of young people. I said this when we were eulogizing Coach Mack, a couple of weeks back. We had Darian Hagan on, and it was great to see Darian and reminiscing about that era. And some young folks right now probably have no idea that Colorado was a perennial not just top 10 program, they were a top 5 program. I mean, they were the Georgia, Alabama for a 7, 8, 10-year period. It was, and even after Rick Neuheisel, when Mac surprised everyone and stepped aside to run Promise Keepers, Neuheisel kept it going, and Gary Barnett to a large measure as well. I just thought about this, Alanna. Iconic coaches or iconic football names taking over either moribund or mediocre football programs. And I would love to see in a coming autumn, maybe having to have a split household for a weekend out there in Eastern Mass.
With UNC and Colorado, stop it. Just stop. The fact that Bill Belichick is even at UNC, which for those of you listening and watching Drew's podcast right now, my husband, former Rockies catcher, because this is a very, Colorado, I would imagine, audience, went to UNC. And obviously Chris is from Providence, Rhode Island, and he grew up a Patriot fan. And that was back in the day before the Tom Brady dynasty and the whole thing, right? Before the Patriots were the Patriots and crushed the Broncos every year. And although he didn't play well in Denver. But anyway, the point is now Belichick is dating a college student for all intents and purposes. Let's be honest. She's like, 24 or 27? Just stop it. It's disgusting. And now he's the head football coach at UNC, which is obviously where Chris went. But
I wasn't going to go there, but
Chris,
I'm glad
he doesn't. This is Chris's happy face, and this is Chris's sad face. This is Chris elated. This is Chris really disappointed. So even if Colorado and UNC went head to head, I would be the screaming lunatic, and Chris would just be like this. So I understand what you're saying, but he has one pulse, and it's this. But yes, that's an odd choice of football coach. But again, maybe it's just so his family can keep rising up the ranks.
I'm going to see what I can pull, with all that weight I can throw around. See if I can get the Heels and the Buffaloes together in an autumn showdown in the next couple of years. Let me go to work on that
please.
one. All right, so I want to take you back to your LA days, and you covered the Rockies. You grew up a Rockies fan, and you went to MLB first, and then you left MLB Network, and you go to the Dodgers. And we all understand this. I think if you're going to be objective, there are certain teams in every sport. I grew up in New York, the Knicks, the Lakers. It's just it's different. The Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, the Bears, the Giants have been awful, but they're still my team. There's certain teams that have an iconic status within the game. The Yankees, obviously, always and forever. The Dodgers are one of those teams, and they've dominated, maybe not in terms of world championships, but they've certainly dominated the headlines for more than a decade now. When you went there, what was your initial impression?
It's funny because I almost didn't take the job because I had almost gone always to LA as a member of the visiting team, right? Goody, you and I have been to LA a billion times in our coverage of the Colorado Rockies, and I would always go as a visitor. So I hated LA. I thought LA was what everyone from the outside thinks it is, that everyone's superficial and everyone's fake and it's, the traffic and the thing. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to myself because I really didn't think I wanted to live in LA. And it actually has become home to me, which is so weird. And it was the best 7 years of my professional career. And I say that because of the way that organization has embraced the people that work for them. And there's a difference between being an employee of the network that covers a team and being an employee of the team. And I was a Dodger employee, which is very different because when I was with the Rockies, I was always whatever the network was at the time. I was always an employee of the network. So it was almost as if, and I have great respect for the Rockies, I would have never left the Rockies had it not been for an opportunity to go national. I think when you're in this business, that's kind of what you want to do, right? Try your hand at going national. But I was very happy with Colorado. And I grew up there, I was born and raised. I'll never forget, my senior year of high school, I was in accounting and my accounting teacher and our head men's basketball coach, Mark Boronik, brought in a TV because the first game of Colorado Rockies history back at the old Mile High, which I will forever, I don't care what the hell the name of the stadium is, it will always be Mile High to me. He rolled in a TV and we got to watch the first ever Rockies game, and I was a senior in high school. I'm dating myself, but we didn't grow up with Major League Baseball in Colorado. We didn't have it until 93. And I remember that moment vividly. And then many years later, as the Rockies reporter, and then subsequently as the Dodgers reporter, Mark Boronik would come and see me at the game. So it was like a full circle moment. And, I almost didn't take the job, as I mentioned, but I really wanted the opportunity. I missed being at the park and having gone from the Rockies for 5 seasons to MLB Network, where I was in the studio primarily. I just really missed. There's something to be said about those cleats that you hear coming out the first time. Obviously now it's at Salt River Fields at Talking Stick, but remember back when we were in Tucson, when the Rockies were spring training in Tucson, and to hear the cleats come out the first day of full squad workouts. I miss the sights and sounds of being at the park. So when the Dodgers launched their new network, my boss at the time, Lon Rosen, wanted a nationally acclaimed broadcast team for the new network. So he went after national folks. And, obviously Oral Hershiser and Nomar Garcia-Parra, 2 very well-respected guys that had played the game at the highest level, were at ESPN. So we got them and wanted some Dodger, former Dodger players as well. So Jerry Harrison Jr., who's played for everybody. Played for like 16 years in the bigs for a variety of teams. John Hartung, who was very well known in the community in terms of the local sports scene. Obviously Vin, that goes without saying. Vin was the pillar. And then we were all just kind of like the supplemental pieces around Vin. So I was very much in awe of being around the game again on a daily basis. And that's why I went. And I'm really, really glad I did, because going to LA opened up so many opportunities for me, career-wise, just professionally, personally. It was a really good decision. But yeah, my perception of LA going there was very different than what it is now, having lived there for 7 years.
One of the things I've said, I got my start, as in Aspen, and I was to supplement my meager income.
Rough life. I went to Wichita Falls, Texas. You got started in Aspen. Poor baby.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take Aspen over Wichita Falls. But I used to tell people, because I'd supplement my income I was a trainer at the Aspen Club, and if you saw someone you thought was a movie star or a famous athlete, it was that person. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing when you would walk on the field 3-4 hours before a game at Dodger Stadium, and as you look over and you say, "Oh, is that?" Yeah, that is that person, right? And it's it's kind of cool. there weren't with all, and it's lovely when the kids come and sing the national anthem at various ballparks. The Rockies do a great job of taking care of local schools. In LA, you're getting somebody who's won like 8 Grammy Awards, right? Like every night. Tuesday night in June against the Rock Show.
Right. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And I remember, and it's not, and I think the Dodgers are really, really good at keeping the past of the game still very much present in the forefront of the current fan. I mean, there's not a day I remember very vividly, and you'll know this, Goody, because you've been around forever, and I know you've been here. But going to Craig's in LA is like a big deal. It's who you know. Everybody that is somebody is at Craig's. It's a restaurant there, and it's impossible to get into and whatever. And I had the opportunity to go, not because of me, but because Don Newcomb and his wife asked me to go to dinner. So you're in Craig's with Don Newcomb, the late, great Don Newcomb. And, here comes Don Zimmer. And then, freaking Bob Costas and this was before I even really got to know Bob. Bob Costas is there. And then there's like all these actresses, and you're just like, your head is spinning. Cause I was like new to LA, and I was like, this is insane. But then it just becomes commonplace. Like I have, I'm friendly. We're not friends, but I'm friendly with Eric Stonestreet from Modern Family. Brad Paisley is one of my closest friends now. I mean, Brad freaking Paisley. Like, this is just normal life in Los Angeles. I mean, Dennis Hayward, the actor, huge Dodger fan. Obviously, Pat Sajak is at all the games. Mary Hart is at all the games. And, it's just
Mary Hart never goes home. I was like,
she doesn't. She doesn't. She's always right there, sitting next to Dennis Gilbert, right behind home plate, and or the on-deck circle, rather.
She was the only one in the ballpark, Alanna, during COVID. Like, there were
me and Mary.
There were fake people, but Mary Hart was real.
Yeah, exactly. She was the only one that was allowed in. No, but it's just it's just a really iconic franchise, and they do such a good job of keeping the older players still relevant. And I mean, anytime you get to have a conversation with Sandy Koufax, who's one of my favorite, he's a very, very private man, but he'll make an appearance at spring training once a year, and then obviously postseason type of situation. And I always address him as Mr. Koufax. He's like, if you say Mr. Koufax one more time, I'm not going to let you talk to me. Like, he's just so sweet. He's just in such great shape, and looks like he could still play. And obviously his career was cut short because of the arm injuries and stuff, but they're tremendous about making you feel part of their family. And they're really, really good about just the history of the game, and just a really special franchise. I know a lot of people right now hate the Dodgers. I know a lot of people think the Dodgers are ruining baseball, and I can appreciate that. And that might be a whole other podcast about why the other 29 teams can spend money as well. But there is something special about LA and about covering that franchise. And, I have 2 World Series rings, and, I have 3 rings, 2 rings of which came up short, obviously in the championship series, not winning the World Series, but at least going. So, it's really special place. And, I'm just grateful for my time there.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned Sandy Koufax. I was speaking to, a class at Colorado Christian University earlier today, literally. And I was telling the story that one of my partners, who well, Jeff Hewson, who played 12 years in the big leagues, so he's been around a lot of famous people, met presidents, and, played behind Nolan Ryan and 2 no-hitters. He said the most nervous he has ever been in his life, he said, I was shaking, is one day several years back when Vin was still with us. Sandy, again, this very well, Sandy Koufax and Vin Scully were very close. And Sandy had come up to the booth, and we're there. And so we get to meet Sandy Koufax, and Jeff Hewson, who's met everybody under the sun and was a professional athlete again for more than a decade. He said he was shaking meeting Sandy Koufax.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I have 2 pictures, and I'm gonna get up really quick so I can show you, so I'm not lying. I have 2 pictures, and this is my home office in Massachusetts. I have 2 pictures that I have that's it, framed. I'll show you the 2 they are.
So who's the other? You and I, and who's the other one?
Yeah, you and I, of course. Duh.
Right.
It's me and Vin. Right. Okay, and everybody has this one, and then this one. I'll show you. Hang on. Bear with me 2 seconds.
All right, no problem.
This one. These are the only 2 I have framed in my office. That's me and Sandy at spring training a few years
awesome. Back. So I'm not gonna get up because the host should never leave his chair or something like that. But Oh, hold on. I am gonna get up. I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna get up.
Okay.
Here we go. This is like tit for tat. I'm like, you know me well. I am also like, if you walked in my house, and you'd been to
But
my
I've
old,
never been invited to. Thank you very much.
you were at my old house, right?
No, I was not.
No.
Never. At one time.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for that. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. So you would not in my office. You'd get an idea maybe for what I do, but you wouldn't know what I do. It's not like a shrine to what I do. And I don't have many. It's not like I have jerseys up and all these different things. I have a couple, but I have two pictures up.
Yeah,
This is
yeah, we all
one,
have it. That's
right?
awesome.
And I
Hey,
have
you got yours
another.
signed though. It's better than I got.
Yeah, well, I have another one he signed for me. I must have got it in a different year. Guy
That's awesome.
privately, he's probably going, "What? Why is this Goodman guy keep getting my picture?" Whatever. But
He was so
anyhow,
special. Such a
oh,
special
God.
man.
I always tell people that as he's the greatest broadcaster there'll ever be. That 100 years from now, we'll be saying the same thing.
Right.
But he truly was an even finer gentleman. Do you have a favorite Vin story?
I do. It happened in Denver. It happened in
Were you,
Denver when I was still with the Rockies.
oh
So
wow,
I was still with the Rockies as their sideline reporter, and the Dodgers were in town. This was back before Vince stopped traveling. Remember, he little by little he started to like scale back, and then there was a point where he only was starting to do NL West cities, and then it was just only California, and then it just got to the point where it was like Dodgers Giants. That's all he was doing in terms of travel and stuff. So I worked with Vin the last 3 years, I believe, of his career before he officially retired. Then I subsequently interviewed him after for a variety of different things. But I was still with the Rockies. It was a home game, so the Dodgers were in town, and I remember being in the media dining. We're up there in the press box at Coors Field, and I remember I'm there, and Vin comes around the corner, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's Vin Scully, and I was still pretty young in my broadcasting career, but everybody knows who Vin Scully is, right? And he goes, you must be honey, because look at all the bees around you. I mean, and I was just like, and there's like nobody on the planet that can get away with saying that other than Vin Scully. And I was like so honored that Vin like would even take the time, but he was just so sweet and so sincere because I don't even know who it was. It could have been you for all I know. We were all up in the media dining room getting food or whatever, and you must be honey because look at all the bees around you.
I just think right now because anybody other than him, their career would probably end like 5 minutes later, maybe shorter, right?
But I tell you what, when Vince says that, I mean, that was back. I mean, the man is as non-threatening as anybody, and it was just so sweet. I mean, he could be my grandfather, So I was absolutely I just loved the man. I loved him, and then being able to work with him. And the first time you hear Vin Scully like throw down to me on the field, getting ready for, and it was Vin didn't have a sideline reporter when it was Vin's game, like it was Vin, right? But there were some, whether it was an exhibition game or whatever the reason was, when he like would say my name and throw down to me or something. That's just very special. I mean, Vin is on the Mount Rush. Think of all the people that have played for the Dodgers. Vin as a broadcaster, never played in Major League Baseball. As a broadcaster, he is always on the Mount Rushmore of Dodgers, right? He could be number one.
He's number one. I mean, there's Jackie Robinson, certainly. But amazingly, he's number one. And I'm thinking out loud here, Alanna, because we just lost another truly iconic figure in Bob Uecker. And maybe with there's no question with Milwaukee, Bob Uecker's on their Mount Rushmore. If you polled all the people, and you worked, as you said earlier, in Madison, if you polled all the great Brewer fans over generations, say, who's the all-time Brewer? Uke's going to get a lot lot of votes. For the Dodgers,
who you put up there? Raleigh Fingers, Yount.
Molitor. I mean, there's names you'd put up there, but I think Uke's probably one. And the Dodgers, Alanna, you can answer this better than I can, but you go back to Brooklyn and there's Jackie Robinson and on forward, all the great Dodgers, right?
I think if you could only do four.
What's that?
If you could only do four, I think it has to be Jackie.
Yeah.
Jackie, Vin, Sandy, and Fernando.
That's interesting. Who the fourth would it be for? Would it be Fernando?
It would have to be Fernando with
Yeah,
the movement that man created, and just
yeah,
the importance of what he was to a very heavily Spanish speaking Latin, Mexican American community. What he meant to baseball, what he meant to that city. I mean, that you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that had more of an impact over a certain amount of time than Fernando did. I mean, yes, if we could expand the mountain, there's others. I'd put Kershaw on there for present day. But I think Sandy, Vin, Jackie, and Fernando would be my four.
For Kai Correa, by the way, last week I'm sporting my Denison baseball sweatshirt. My son Jacob played there. Putting together a Mount Rushmore for each team, especially, when you get to teams like the Dodgers, the Giants, the Yankees, it's hard. But what's fascinating, without question, as we talked about, Vin Scully's on there. Vin Scully is on there. And I think Bob Uecker is on there with Milwaukee, as we talked about. Next week, we'll get into some more stories, and we'll discuss the salary disparity in baseball. And Alanna has some, I think, distinct opinions on that, especially after working for the Dodgers for a long period of time, the team that spends just about more than everybody every single year. So we'll do that next week in part 2 with Alanna. I know you enjoyed it. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed that hockey game. I'm sure for many of you didn't like the outcome, but it was tremendous, and thankfully it was played at that high level that it wasn't one team ended up having a bad game and it became a 3-goal affair. It was fitting that it went to overtime. So congrats to Canada. The United States gave everything they had, and hopefully they get them the next time around. Speaking of the next time around, we'll do it in 7 days. I'm headed tomorrow morning, bright and early, down to Scottsdale and spring training. I'll be down there for the better part of the week, so we'll start to get some guests from Rockies spring training and sunny Scottsdale. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Be well.